People have this perceived limit of what's possible for a human. We're here to erase the lines, and we have the ability to do that. We are in a new evolutionary phase, but most people tend to be so focused on the consciousness aspect that they ignore the body. Look at this human system. This is your vehicle of consciousness. Whatever it is you want to experience, you've got to get this vehicle in that kind of condition. That generally is not achievable naturally. DNA is the hardware that everything operates on. The epigenetics is the software. That's where we actually have control. Now through medications, peptides, technology, we can bring ourselves into this enhanced human state. But what if we could increase empathy? What if we could increase compassion too? We can solve world problems with a greater probability with more intelligent population. It's one of those things that's still in the realm of science fiction for most people, but this is all possible. When that worldview changes, that's when advances are going to accelerate. There are really no limits to our potential. This is enlightenment.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is This week, I was lucky enough to sit down with a pioneer in human optimization through the form of epigenetics. And for the last couple of years, we've been speaking about epigenetics with some amazing guests on London Real, like Dr. Bruce Lipton or Dr. Joe Dispenza. And we used to think that our DNA would predetermine our course in life, but we now know that isn't true. And it's the expression of those genes that can change your life. It can make you more of a high-performance person, more mentally sharp, more physically fit, or just more productive. And Dr. Daniel Stickler knows a lot about that. He was a vascular surgeon with over 3,000 surgeries, but now he's a consultant for Google and a lecturer at Stanford, and he offers epigenetics high-performance coaching. And I actually submitted my DNA to the doctor before we shot the episode, and he came back with all sorts of fascinating information about me and how I can express my gene code in a more optimal way. And we've actually decided to offer this same service with a special offer to you here at London Real. So if you click on the link below or go to londonreal.tv/health, you can submit a sample of your own DNA, and then Dr. Stickler will have one of his high-performance epigenetics coaches contact you and walk you through the information and how you can use it to be more high performance in your life. So super excited for this, and I know you're going to enjoy this incredible conversation with Dr. Daniel Stickler. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Dr. Daniel Stickler, the author, speaker, and medical pioneer in human optimization. You are a former vascular surgeon who performed nearly 3,000 operations before concluding that the traditional approach to medicine is not ideal for long-term health. Your work now focuses on longevity, epigenetics, and lifestyle optimization. Today, you're the medical director of the Neurohacker Collective, a consultant for Google on epigenetics and AI in healthcare, and a lecturer at Stanford University. Dr. Stickler, welcome to London Real.
Thank you.
Great having you here. I'm super excited to talk about this stuff today. We might as well tell everybody right now that you have been analyzing my DNA, and hopefully you can share with me some of that knowledge today about how that might apply to my longevity and my fitness and all that stuff. You know, last year I got a crazy challenge from a guest to run, and Ironman 70.3 on a 100% plant-based diet. I had no history with endurance sports, and I got stuck about midway, and I had to call up our friend Dr. Tamsin. She did blood work and found I was kind of low in B12, and and I really needed her and the help to get through that race. So this stuff is important to me. I'm no spring chicken. I'm 48 years old, but I like getting everything out of my life. I was training breakdancing about an hour ago. I swim every week. I do hand balancing. I still run distance. I still love being active, but I also love being the best me. And there's a sign out at our world headquarters here that actually just went up, and it's London Real Transform Yourself. And I have these great guests in here, and we talk about ways people can transform themselves. I have an academy. We get people to build businesses and start podcasts. But thinking about your physical body is just as important, when it comes to transforming yourself. And so I'd really like to talk about that, with you today. This word epigenetics is a funny word, and maybe you can help us define it. I had Dr. Bruce Lipton on here, and he talked about epigenetics, and it was one of our most popular episodes ever. And I think people find this fascinating, that we kind of were told as kids that your DNA is this, and here you go, and that's your life. And then this concept that you can express your genes in different ways, I think has a lot of people that are maybe hopeful. Also, I think mindset can have a lot to do with that. So maybe you could start off and just tell us, what is epigenetics and why is it important? And maybe tell us a little bit about that.
We got to this point where we mapped the human genome, and people expected these spectacular results that would come from mapping it, and it has been. It's the equivalent of the man walking on the moon. It's spectacular that we've done that. But the interesting thing is that 99.5%, greater than 99.5% of our DNA is identical in every human being on Earth. You look at the 3 billion base pairs, the 3 billion data points that we have, and really less than 0.5% is what makes each of us different. And that less than 0.5% is what we call the polymorphisms. But on top of that, we have the epigenetics. So the code itself doesn't change over time. As we go through life, our code is identical. People ask me all the time, can you change your code? And you can't. It is your fixed code. It's the hardware that everything operates on. The epigenetics is the software. And that's where we actually have control over outcomes. And everything we do can change gene expression. DNA is this unimaginably intelligent molecule. Its whole role is for you and me to thrive. And it's constantly assessing environment and making changes in order to say, okay, this is a stressful environment, this is a good environment, what do I need to do to optimize my function in this environment? That's epigenetics. So when we eat certain foods, we call foods certain bioactives, we can change expressions of genes. When we exercise, we can change 1/3 of our genome's expression when we chronically exercise. When we meditate, we can change 2,200 genes out of 23,000. Fantastic depth of variability that is built in there, and all we have to do is do the right things to make it happen.
Wow, that's hard to believe that we could control our genetic code like that with just practices. You wouldn't think meditation could change your gene expression.
Oh yeah.
But it can. Mm-hmm. And most people don't bother with any of that stuff, really. A lot of people aren't really concentrated on their diet, on their movement, or necessarily on their mindfulness. They kind of just live out their lives and expect their DNA to get them wherever they're supposed to go. That's not the way to live anymore, and that's kind of why you stopped being the typical doctor and started doing this stuff, right?
Right. Yeah. Medicine has been based on this premise, and health in general. It's all based on a premise of let's have this stepwise postponement of death. So you just go through life and you gradually deteriorate, and we're just trying to postpone that as much as we can. That's what medicine is about right now. And when it looks at this human system that is us, it's looking at it in a very basic way. We are very complex systems. Everything we do changes expression. We have unpredictability. We can't be reduced into a reductionistic state based on an input. And everything in medicine is based on that now. And this is kind of defining us as a complicated system, like a robot or an airplane or something like that, something where every piece of it can be analyzed and say, if we put this input in, we will get this output 100% of the time. And this is why we have algorithms in medicine. And what we've been doing is creating a new paradigm around this, where we look at the human system as complex, and we take a complex system approach, and everything is based on probability. So we are very data-driven. We collect data. We get as much data on each individual as we can, and then we say, okay, here's where you are. How do we get you over here, where you want to be? And that's people have this perceived limit of what's possible for a human. What was it you said at the beginning? Be your best you. What is your best you? Most people have lines drawn that, okay, this is my best me. We're here to erase the lines. I mean, the best you, with what we have now in advances in science and technology, we can take that version of the best you and move it well across that line now.
And so you're all about taking someone's current state, looking at their genetics, their epigenetics, and saying, okay, what can we do to take you to the next level, as opposed to slowly dying.
Right.
And then later they'll call you up in the old version of you at 65 and say, I need a bypass surgery, I got type 2 diabetes, and then we spend 90% of your healthcare costs in the last year of your life, and then we put you in the grave and we do it again, right?
75% of what kills us is lifestyle related. 75%, and what I'm talking about is the top 10 causes of death. Every one of them has an enormous lifestyle component, over 90%, heart disease, cancer. People say, well, cancer, isn't that a lot of genetics and things like that? It's not, it's lifestyle.
Cancer is lifestyle related.
Yeah, I mean, you have a few that are very focused on genetics, but the bulk of the cancers are related to lifestyle in some way.
Eating, drinking, smoking, not movement, diet, and even stress levels.
Absolutely, all of that. And, even like accidental deaths. What's the most common cause of accidental deaths? It's drinking and driving. It's sleep deprivation and driving. All of these things that can be prevented from lifestyle components. And this gets me on this kick of preventative medicine. It's such a poor term. I mean, everything about lifestyle is preventative medicine. So I don't know why we have siloed it to say, oh, well, we're gonna take you into this preventative protocol for heart disease. Well, how is that any different than a preventative protocol for diabetes or preventative protocol for obesity? It just means get the human system into a healthy lifestyle that translates into a positive outcome.
And before we jump into like some of my results, what are some of the things that people should know they should be doing now to prolong their life, give themselves a higher quality of life? And then also, how does knowing your genetic or epigenetic breakdown change those decisions?
Well, the main thing is you can't kind of take individual paths to wellness and think, okay, well, if I start sleeping 8 hours a night, or if I start eating a good diet, when people want to lose weight, it's like, okay, I'll need the diet and exercise. And yet if they're sleeping 5 hours a night, it doesn't matter how good they are at that. It's not going to happen. So when we look at addressing something, we address the entire system: sleep, stress, nutrition, supplementation, hormones, cognitive function, movement, and environmental exposures. That is our baseline. You've got to bring that into homeostasis, so all of those into a healthy level for the human system to really be primed to go to the next level. And most people don't do that. They will focus on diet and exercise, or they'll focus on sleep and neglect something else. And what we do is we focus them in on that. And it doesn't matter if you come with MS or diabetes or you're a professional athlete. This is a spectrum moving one direction. You can enter it at any point. If you're coming in and saying, I want to lose weight, you've got an end point. You're starting here and you want to end here, and then what? Nothing else left up here. And this is where medicine is right now. You're either diseased or non-diseased. If you're non-diseased, they really don't have anything other than preventative medicine for you. And it's just the wrong approach, I think.
Yeah, it's like, okay, when you get sick or get something, you go to the hospital, they fix you, and then they send you back home,
right,
and wait till that other thing happens. I've had people that have been to the hospital recovering from a heart surgery, and the meal they give them is like something that would, get them ill again. I mean, it's almost a weird disconnect at the hospital. Whereas, okay, if it's chronic, here, otherwise you go back into this system that creates these ailments. That must be kind of a weird, frustrating thing to be a part of.
It is. I mean, especially since a lot of lifestyle recommendations are based on lobbying organizations and things like that. So it's not really based on the true science of what we see.
Like what, the milk lobby or the beef lobby or whatever.
Sugar lobby.
Okay, right. And even the medical profession is oftentimes controlled by companies that are looking for studies and...
Yeah, the pharmaceutical company.
Kind of own...
even in research, it's hard to get research that isn't related in some way to a pharmaceutical outcome, because that's where the funding's coming from. A great deal of that funding comes from the pharmaceutical companies, and you're publishing data that's against the pharmaceutical companies, you're probably not going to get funding.
It's a really weird, scary racket, and we've had a few guests talk about it. Whereas if you want to become a professor or a doctor that's recognized, you have to publish. In order to publish, you have to have a study. The studies are funded by the pharmaceutical industry. They only want to study things that are good for their drugs. And it's this kind of, secret or open secret where this thing happens, and yet we look at our doctors as kind of these greatest marks of society, and you are, but it's all kind of tainted, right?
Oh, it is. And I was talking with one of your staff members before we came on, and we were talking about my typical day. And I wake up at 5 a.m., and for the first 2 hours of my day, I'm on the internet. And I'm on there reading all the current findings, all the stuff that's making headlines in the medical world, all the new research papers that are coming out. But for 2 hours, 7 days a week, every morning, that's what I'm doing. And for me, that just barely keeps me up with what's happening right now. I look at it and I'm thinking how doctors that have delayed doing stuff like this, how do they keep up? Because this is exponentially growing. I mean, I'm at a point where 2 hours may not even be enough to keep up anymore.
Wow.
And it's just a wonderful time to be practicing medicine for sure, because all this new stuff in the biologics and the genetics and epigenetics, I mean, it's just fascinating stuff.
And you're big into longevity. You just came from a conference, I think, in Liechtenstein, and and there was a great lecture where you showed, it's online, and you showed two Mustangs. And one is from like the 60s, and I used to have a 68 Mustang, so this means something to me. And one is kind of this old junker that you might see on the side of the road, and one is one in this pristine condition, looks like mint from the factory. And you said, what if when you were given your body, you said, this is the car you have to have the rest of your life? How would you treat it? Because with cars, we don't think we're gonna have it very long, and we treat it this way. But it was just a great analogy that, especially when you're young, you treat your body in a horrible way. And I have a whole history that came out with my movie Iron Mind about how I nearly killed myself with my lifestyle decisions. But it really is a vehicle that you need to take care of. And we can live long. And not only long, we can live great long lives, right? You believe that.
Right, I think, health span is important.
Health span, not lifespan.
Right.
Because I see people in their 90s, and I don't see many 90-year-olds that I'd want to switch places with these days, because a lot of them are physically, mentally having issues. Yeah. So I always think, why would I want to live to 150 if it doesn't look great at 100?
Right.
So you were saying?
Well, I mean, my mother is 73 years old, and she does CrossFit, she does pull-ups, she deadlifted 165 pounds. She's 5 foot tall and about 110 pounds. And she's a beast. I mean, she can back squat 130 pounds, and wow. You just don't see that in many people that age. And we've taken age, and age has become a chronologic thing. So, you should retire at 65 and all that. But you look across the population, and chronologic number means absolutely nothing anymore. And we talked about this at this longevity roundtable, that when does aging start? And aging actually starts preconception. So what happens in preparation for that child to be conceived can actually have a huge impact on that child's life. Then the intrauterine development, you've got huge impacts there. And then the first 2 years of life are highly critical for setting the stage for the rest of the child's life. Wow. And we run a preconception through pregnancy program, and It's amazing what people are unaware of when setting a child up for what they're going to be.
Preconception, so before even the egg hits the sperm hits the egg?
Oh yeah, I mean,
really?
Guys don't realize what their contribution is, but for 3 months, it takes 3 months for sperm to truly mature in the reproductive system. And during that time, that sperm's not carrying just that little single strand of DNA. That sperm is collecting microRNAs. And microRNAs are like these, they're like these little email packets that are being sent out through the body. So cells will say, oh wow, this is a really stressful environment. I'm going to send a message out to everybody and tell them so that they can make adjustments to thrive in this environment. So a male who is really stressed leading up to the pregnancy will end up with a child that can potentially have abnormal stress responses. An alcoholic father, they've actually shown this in the studies, an alcoholic father can actually contribute to having a child with fetal alcohol syndrome, even though the mother doesn't drink alcohol.
Wow.
I mean, it's amazing the impacts that we haven't given credit to the fathers in their preparation for pregnancies.
Yeah, because I just thought it was DNA. That's it, but it's not, right? Because the synthesizing of that new baby's DNA has all of these other contributing factors.
Yeah, these microRNAs tell the DNA how to express.
Wow.
So they're like, okay, stressful environment, you need to change the way you're functioning here. We're going to upregulate this, downregulate that. And microRNAs are becoming, it's another realm of the biologics of exosomes. This is going to be a game changer. I mean, right now we're dealing with peptides, which peptides are turning the pharmaceutical world on its ear as these are coming into the market. They're not legal in the UK right now, but they're prescription in Australia and the US. And we're seeing outstanding outcomes with all the biologics. I mean, stem cells we're still not sure of right now. Peptides, we're seeing amazing results, and the exosomes are the next thing with the microRNAs. This is where we're going to start getting into true, I think, age reversal.
Age reversal.
Absolutely.
Really. This is exciting stuff.
Yeah.
And I love this whole human optimization piece. And again, like, I need to be at my best every day in order to do what I want to do. And I realize every day is precious for me. And so I'm always looking to that stuff. I mean, Dr. Tamsin had me on an IV bag a couple weeks ago. I'm not sure what was in there, but I'm trying that. I've played with nootropics in the past. Obviously, I did some B12 supplementation. I'm constantly looking to see what can be done. I've heard about peptides. I mean, it's exciting, and it can really make a difference in your consciousness, your output, and your longevity. Right?
Everything. I mean, you got to look at this human system. I mean, this is your vehicle of consciousness. Everything in life is about experiences. Okay, how do you want to experience life? Do you want a Ferrari? Do you want to be experiencing life in a Bentley? Whatever it is you want to experience, you've got to get this vehicle in that kind of condition. And we have the ability to do that. And then, you don't want to have a little clunker that's going along to experience life. And so for us, I mean, we deal with clients that they want the Ferrari, they want the Bentley or the Mercedes. They want that vehicle to experience life in.
Yeah, well, why wouldn't you, I mean, most of the people that watch my program are looking for new ways of thinking, or looking to transform themselves in some way, with a meditation practice, or a new way of looking at life, or a gratitude practice, or start this. But, what about your own body? Right. A lot of times, okay, maybe there's a diet and a movement practice, but they haven't thought beyond that. And you're talking about like 8 different factors that you're trying to optimize. Right. And if one of them is off, you're saying it can be kind of pointless. If your sleep is off or this is off.
I gave a talk in Silicon Valley to a bunch of young tech entrepreneurs, and they're all looking for the limitless pill.
Right. This is the movie with Bradley Cooper, where he takes the pill and he's super smart.
And I said, let's start off with the fact that the limitless pill doesn't exist, and it will not exist. There is no such thing as the limitless pill. Now, can we potentially get to where he was? Absolutely we can. But I said, let me ask you this. How many of you in this room sleep more than 6 hours a night on average? And like 2 people raised their hand. And I said, you know what? I wouldn't even consider working with any of you to enhance your cognitive performance until you got your sleep straightened out. And they were shocked by that. I mean,
because it's like trying to get a clunker to run fast.
Yeah.
They have to have those basics in place.
I call it putting nitrous on a Pinto. You know, you can hook it up and get one good run out of it, but after that, the engine's trashed. I mean, that's what happens when these young guys that or girls that really don't pay attention to the basic lifestyle components try to enhance in certain ways, and the system falls apart when it's pushed that hard.
Okay, so there's no magic pill. You really have to put in the work, but do the smart work and make sure you're monitoring everything. And after we met a few months ago, you were wearing your Garmin, and you're like, I wear this all the time.
It's right there.
That's there. And I started wearing mine to sleep at night, and I started tracking all my REM sleep and everything that you told me about, and it was really eye-opening. And again, what gets measured gets improved. So I was watching it, and I was getting to bed earlier, and I was seeing all these things. So that's just one component of what you do. But first you look at the genetic analysis, and then you take people through various programs. Some are medium level, and some are super high performance.
Right. So our data collection is labs, genetics, epigenetics. We look at urinary metabolites. We look at cognitive performance tests. We look at lifestyle evaluations, quality of life inventories. So we run all of this before clients even come in. And we have all this data and we whiteboard them. So we throw it up on a whiteboard and say, okay, we've got 5 clinicians in the room, and we basically are your board of directors for you. And we go through it and we say, here's where they are, here's where they want to be, or here's where they can be. How do we get them from here to here? And then the client comes into our practice, and over a 2-day period, they go through brainwave mapping. So we do QEEG brainwave mapping, and we map for performance. I mean, I can tell you your brain will not be normal on a brainwave map, and nor do you want it to be, because high performers don't have normal brainwave patterns. And when we're comparing to a normative database, if you're normal, I would not like to have that happen. I want to be better than normal.
Okay.
And so we look at that, and we look at ways that we can enhance that.
And you track my EEG while you're having me do things?
No, the EEG we look at is in a baseline state of eyes open and eyes closed.
Okay.
What you're thinking of is the psychophysiologic stress profile or performance profile, where we hook you up to that machine, looks like a lie detector, and we take you through 5 stressors.
Okay.
And we see what happens to your autonomic nervous system in these stressors and how quickly they get back to baseline after it's removed. Right. So we see people like David Goggins would be very strong on this. We see like Google executives that are very strong on this, where they can elevate their stress response and then bring it straight back down to baseline as soon as that stressor's removed.
And that's what high performance people do.
That is, and it can be trained. It's not something you have to be born with. So we look at that. We look at human movement. So we look at your posture, your gait, your foot strike. We run electrical signals through all your muscle groups to find out if they're working the right way. And then at the end of the 2 days, we sit down with you for another 3 hours and say, okay, how do we get there? Let's map it out. And then monitor you on an ongoing basis with the wearables and follow-up labs. And throughout the year, it's just a stepwise progression. So not progression towards death, but progression towards optimization. You're going up the stairs, not down when you come to see us.
Right. And so you're making someone limitless, maybe, without
that's
the
our
pill.
goal, yeah.
All right. And reversing the aging process is what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, what we're looking at is we're extending health span. You know, that's our ultimate goal. As a consequence of that, we're hoping that will also translate into extended longevity, which we're working towards. But new technology is coming very rapidly. And we're already seeing things like metformin, like rapamycin, GDF11, you know, all these new things that are coming on that are showing, yeah, definitely a positive impact on aging. We've got new senolytics that are about to hit the market, NAD, you know, all these things that can potentially mitigate the aging effect, but then we start moving into reversal. And it's not going to come all at once. I mean, we're not going to Benjamin Button it. We'll have something that will intervene that'll maybe knock you back 3 years, okay? And then you'll age another year, and then something else will come along that'll knock you back 5 years. And so it's going to be a gradual forward-backward movement that will eventually net into negative. And a lot of people don't believe that this is going to happen, but you know, I've been running in this industry for quite a while, and this is the first time I've seen the excitement from everybody in the industry around it. This is not one of those ones that, there's a group of them that are like all on board. I mean, there's a lot of people actually on board with this, and so I think it's truly coming.
It's like that critical mass that it's actually finally happening now, not 10
100th
years.
monkey, it's happening.
Yeah, the 100th monkey. And I mean, I will say that it's an interesting world that you're in, and like, Dr. Tamson's in, and people like Ben Greenfield. And once I look in, I realize that there's like, it's cool to be part of this club.
It really is.
Because like, some of the stuff with the peptides and all this stuff, it's like, wait a second, like this is really next level stuff. Mm-hmm. I always feel like I know something that's a secret that the public doesn't know. I feel like I'm in the medical Illuminati.
Yeah.
And I feel like, wow, I'm in a special place, because if it wasn't for London Real, I wouldn't know about this stuff. But I mean, this can literally be a game changer in what I do every day. Mm-hmm. How much I can do, how great I feel, which affects my relationships, my energy, everything. And if you're trying to win in life, which I think we all are, you might meet someone that says, I'm not trying to win, but everybody wants to live a healthier and happier and more productive life. And in Silicon Valley, maybe it means they want to get the IPO faster, but even a single mother of 2 in London wants to win.
Yeah.
And she just wants to win in her own way, which means great energy, great health, a lot of time for her kids, and optimization, right? So this is for everybody.
You'd be surprised, though, the number of people who really don't have that desire, that are happy where they are. They don't want to put the effort into creating a better outcome necessarily.
Is that also because maybe they were raised in a society where it's not talked about, where you get to end of life and then these things happen to you?
Stay calm and carry on. I mean, it's, this person's worse than I am, so I'm okay. It's changing a mindset of people to understand that there are really no limits to our potential. Where can we go with this stuff? And the biohackers, and a lot of people don't like the term biohackers, but they're truly people that have pioneered a lot of this self-experimentation. And let's face it, we're in an N of 1 category. This number of participants in the study is 1, and that's you. We can't keep comparing on population-based comparative levels, and this is what all the studies are doing. Those can provide probability outcomes for us, and we can look at those to guide us. But what I have seen in my medical career is that everybody responds in an individual way. I mean, what's the perfect human diet? There isn't one. There is a perfect diet for you, typically, and it takes some trial and error to figure out where it is. The more data you have going into it, the shorter that time of trial and error can be. This is why we like the genetics and the lab work and getting all the data to kind of shortcut that process. But every individual has their own unique characteristics. And even if you have this high probability that, this is the perfect diet for you, and we put you on it, we can see in the system that the system's stressed or it's not stressed. How's it responding? We look at resting heart rates over the course of the month. We look at stress scores over the course of a month. We can correlate all this data. I mean, you do something to intervene with your sleep patterns. We can see what's happening with that. So wearable technology it's not 100% accurate, but the dynamic of it is what's important, is how is it changing based on the input that we're putting into the system.
Yeah, and it is very specific to the individual, and that's what's really interesting about it. Like, you need to get a human opinion, because it's all these numbers, and you really have to have your team, like you said, your own board of directors look at you and say, okay, this is what we think we're going to do for you, but we're going to monitor all of this stuff, and over time we're going to really optimize you to where you can have all of these things that you want, which is really interesting. So I'd love to jump into some of my results.
Okay.
So I did this DNA array, and so I spit into a tube and sent it off, and then you guys got all the numbers. So it's a bit like 23andMe, but I found when I got 23andMe back, it just didn't tell me anything. I was like, really? I got a gene that does this? But you look at things in a different way, and then you have a team that also can take this information and then give you this entire optimized strategy. And if people are curious about this, by the way, then go to londonreal.tv/health, where this whole system is there, where people want to go ahead and take this test. And then you have total different performance levels that you take people on, right? You have like,
we have the full medical optimization, and we have kind of lesser levels of that. And then we have our health coaches, which we have 300 health coaches worldwide that have trained in our model, done 90 hours of online training, and they're very skilled in the interpretation of the genetics.
Right. So people get the test and then they get on with one of those professionals and they walk them through, and then there it's as far as people want to go. If they want, they can go to the next level and get the whole, the whole like Rolls Royce performance level of this stuff. So, anyways, I found this stuff fascinating. So I'm not sure if I should ask, but what did you see for me? And how can that affect me going forward?
Yeah, typically you don't. We supplied you with a report, and we typically will not give the report unless it's being given through a coach. So the time when you get the report is while you're on with the coach. So you had a little bit of pre-read on it.
Yeah.
But looking at it, there were certain things that did show up. One of the things I found is that you carry a variant of ApoE, and that variant indicates that people who carry this variant are best off to, number one, exercise, not smoke, and minimize saturated fat in the diet. So if you do that, if you're eating a high saturated fat diet, there's an increased probability of cognitive decline and development of atherosclerosis, these kind of things, based on your ability to transport the saturated fats well with that gene variant.
So for me, my Achilles heel would be smoking, not moving, and high saturated fats.
Right.
And somebody next to me might be able to do those things and not be as in a bad spot. But for me, genetically, I'm predisposed to where...
Like me, I'm better off on a higher fat, lower carb diet. And when I say higher fat, I'm not talking saturated fat. So even in somebody that can do well with saturated fats, we still try to keep it less than 10% and focus on the other fats, the monounsaturated fats, the olive oils, the avocados, and the omega-3s, the fish oils. So even when people do well with total fats in general and saturated fats specifically, we still try to keep that at a minimum. But for you, less than 5% would be ideal.
Okay.
But you also have these variants in your carbohydrates that indicate that you do better with a higher complex carb diet. So your plant-based diet was actually very good for that. Now, I can't say that I have many performance athletes that can get away with a plant-based diet, and you probably had a little bit of reserve from going into it with the other aspects. But this gene variants that you carry, people tend to lose abdominal fat better with a higher complex carb. This isn't talking about like sweets and simple sugars and simple carbs. This is complex carbs, so over 200, 250 grams a day of complex carbs.
Which could be like what, a bread or a rice or...
Vegetables, and I count the starchy carbs in there, so the sweet potatoes, the rice, those tend to contribute to that, but you don't want that as the predominant starch as part of the carbohydrates.
Okay.
But it's the one that we say these people burn fat in the flame of a carbohydrate. So they're the ones that will go on the ketogenic diet or the paleo diet, and they'll be like, I'm gaining weight and all my friends are losing weight on this diet. And we're like, well, try adding some more complex carbs in there. All of a sudden, they do that and they're losing weight and their friends are jealous because they're able to eat the complex carbs and get good results.
Interesting. And yet we kind of as a society have this one size fits all, buy the paleo book, buy the keto book, and it'll work for you.
Right.
But without knowing your genetic component, you could set yourself up for failure.
See, dietary wise, we ancestrally, our genes adapt, not only in the inherited polymorphisms that we have, but also in gene expressions that we carry through generations. So somebody that comes from an Inuit Eskimo family that's been there for generations, they're going to thrive on high fat. Their genes are adapted to that environment. So they can eat the high fat diets and do exceptionally well with it. They won't get heart disease. They can even eat really high saturated fat and get away with it. Somebody from Southeast Asia, though, who background-wise is more on the starchy carb dietary patterns, their genes have adapted over centuries of development, evolutionary development, to say, we're going to thrive in this environment because this is the environment we've been exposed to. And then trying to put them on a high saturated fat diet, they're going to get the heart disease. So in the US and in Europe, we have such a hodgepodge of ancestry that without having our genetics, we just have to guess at what's happening in that. And by looking at that mix of what we have in the genes, we can actually adapt to or we can identify a dietary pattern that's going to predict the best outcome. Now given that, most people of European ancestry do really well with Mediterranean-based diets. And it's pretty consistent in the genetics. So, if you have to guess without getting the genetics, a Mediterranean-based diet is a very healthy way to go. And
which means olive oils, fish, vegetables.
Period.
Yeah. Stop there.
Some grains, a little bit of grains, but not much.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And that's your just general start point with a lot of people of the European descent.
Yeah.
Okay. Now with my gene, it shows that maybe some complex carbs might actually help me.
Right.
Okay. And then I'm predisposed that if I am exercising regularly and then not smoking.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, I stopped smoking years ago, so that's good. And I do exercise every day because for me, it gets me to my optimal level.
And your exercise genetics, and we do a pretty deep dive into exercise genetics. I mean, our total report with everything you got is about 80 pages long.
Yeah, it's massive.
And your exercise genetics are exceptional, and it doesn't surprise me.
I was a science geek in school.
It doesn't matter. I mean, you're carrying them.
Okay.
When you start using them, you're activating them. So it just makes it easier for you to train in these. I mean, I've seen people that had endurance genes that became Olympic sprinters, and it doesn't prevent you from doing that. You just have to work a little harder at doing it. But you have genetically gifted genetics that give you the ability. Your VO2 max genetics are exceptionally strong. So if you sit on a couch, it doesn't matter because you're not using them, you're not training them. But because you have those, if you start training them, you will train easier. You have genetics for on muscle for increasing strength to exceptional levels without creating a great deal of hypertrophy in doing so. So you don't have to get large to get the strength that you have.
Interesting.
You have recovery genes that tell us you can go back-to-back days on intense workouts and probably keep the inflammation at a minimum. I would still track based on your metrics on the Garmin and how your stress level does with it. But
Which we track in my resting heart rate to track that mostly? Or?
Well, it's based on first beat technology algorithms, and most of it's about the PPG heart rate analysis, the ongoing daily analysis. So when you exercise, you should see a high stress peak. I had clients that said, you told me to watch things that cause high stress, and when I exercise, I get really high stress, and they're like, should I not be doing as that intensive? I'm like, no, that's really good. You just got to look at how fast it gets back to baseline. If your stress stays up through the night after an intense workout, then you probably shouldn't be doing another one the next day. Right. But if you quickly get back to baseline stress levels, then it's perfect because stress is what creates positive outcomes for us. I mean, people think stress is a bad thing, and stress is really what contributes to longevity and healthy longevity.
Right.
You gotta have some.
You gotta have it, right? Otherwise.
I mean, think about this. I mean, exercise in and of itself. Ask a physician why is exercise healthy? Creates more free radicals than anything else that we do in the course of a day. It tears muscle. It traumatizes joints where you get micro tears and hemorrhages and everything else. How in the world is this a healthy thing to be doing? And the answer is it's because of the epigenetics. Because that stressor on the system tells the system, this is an unfamiliar environment. I have stressed the body, so I need to make adaptations to thrive in this new way of living. And this is why when people go on a weight loss program, they're couch potatoes and they decide, I'm going to go eat well and exercise, and they do it for 3 months. They lose 20 pounds. And they're on cloud nine. And then the next 3 months, they do the exact same thing. And there's no weight loss. And they're like, okay, what happened? Well, what happened is their familiar zone of where their body's functioning shifted up. So they're down here at the beginning and they're exercising and they're going out of the familiar zone into stress. The body says, whoa, this is not my familiar zone. I've got to change gene expressions to get myself into this new zone. And once it fully adapts, you can continue doing that, but if you're not pushing it a little bit harder, you're not going to get those results.
Gotcha. All right. So interesting what you're saying about me, because when I did the Ironman last year, I was training like a lot, probably 14 different workouts per week, because the back-to-backs and all that stuff. But I was recovering really well. I mean, I was training every day for 80 or 90 days. And I was able to do that. So that was interesting. My VO2 max would mean what? Is that good for a kind of sprinting anaerobic cardio, or is it good for endurance as well?
Both.
Okay.
VO2 max, I mean, Lance Armstrong had one of the most exceptional VO2 maxes. And, you can attribute it all you want to performance enhancement stuff, but it wasn't that.
It's not, because you can't.
He was genetically gifted with a VO2 max that was exceptional. And so that gives him that ability to do those kind of sports and excel in those. VO2 max is much better for a more endurance type sport like the Ironman or marathons or something like that. But it also can give you benefit in the short-term sprints, but not as much. VO2 max is more aligned with endurance performance.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.